Analyst, my buddy Bucky Brooks. Catch him on the weekdays, Saturday nights with Jonas Knox. All right, you have contacts in the league. I haven't talked to you in a while. Green Bay drafts a quarterback. What's the signal there? And why didn't they get a wide receiver? What's that signal?
So it's a few different things that are at play, Colin. One, you have to understand from an organizational philosophy, the Green Bay Packers have always been on the front end of getting quarterbacks. That's something that Ron Wolf did, and he believed in. And everyone that is in that front office still has ties to the Wolf and the way that it was done. Right. Ron Wolf traded for Brett Favre, gave him a first-round pick, and took Brett Favre on. Ted Thompson, who succeeded Ron Wolf, drafted Aaron Rodgers in the first round. So Brian Gutekunst was in those rooms. He understands how important it is to have the quarterback and have the next one ready. When Jordan Love was in range, they made an organizational decision, hey, let's get our next quarterback so now we can have him, we can develop him and groom him, and we don't have to be one of those teams that's desperately looking for a quarterback when we need one. It's kind of like going to the grocery store with a list as opposed to going when you're hungry. You make better decisions when you go with the list in hand. That's what the Packers did.
Aaron needs to play better, though.
Oh, he absolutely needs to play better. And I think that's also the thing, because we've romanticized Aaron Rodgers and we built him up to be a myth, like he's built up in mythical proportions, we refuse to look at the way that he's played the last 3 years. And 2 of those years, he has been injured. And then last year, when you really look at the way that he played, lowest completion percentage, lowest passer rating since 2014, I think what you want to do is you want to be on the front end of when your great players begin to decline. And the Green Bay Packers are trying to make sure that the franchise is protected by having the most important position in place with a guy that is ready to be able to do it.
You know, as a scout, 30% of the first round won't be any good. Certain positions like wide receiver, it's even higher than that. Yet if you and I suggest a first-round player could struggle, it's outrageous. I think Joe Burrow is overstated. I think there's recency bias. What say you on Joe Burrow? I'm not saying bust, but I think we have elevated him to mythological status, and I think he's a good prospect. He's not John Elway.
Oh, I agree with that. I think he certainly has been built up. And I think some of the mistakes that we can make when we're evaluating is we just look at the last season. We don't look at the entire body of work. Joe Burrow was outstanding last year, the best college football season that we've seen at the quarterback position. However, talent-wise, he's not an A-level talent. He is a guy that, when surrounded by great talent, he's a perfect point guard. He can distribute, let those guys go to work.
Yes.
I would kind of liken him to Matt Ryan. When Matt Ryan has the elevated cast, he plays at a higher level. We see Matt Ryan play at the MVP level when everything is right around him. In fact, I would say Joe Burrow is probably more like the guy that he's replacing in Cincinnati, Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
Andy Dalton, very early in his career, 5 straight playoff appearances, won a lot of games. They had a great supporting cast. He looked good. I think Joe Burrow is more in that category than when people talk about Joe Montana and all the other stuff. Like, I think we need to temper that down.
Yeah.
Good player. I'm not ready to say that he's going to set the world on fire.
Yeah, I totally agree. Henry Ruggs worries me as a first-round bust. Speed guy, finesse receiver, wasn't the best receiver, in my opinion, on his college team. I think Henry Ruggs you could look up a year from now and go, that didn't work. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think it's very important that when we're evaluating players, we need to evaluate and project them in the roles that they played in college. Meaning Henry Ruggs was the second or third receiver at Alabama. I mean, Jerry Jeudy was the number one. And so to project Henry Ruggs to be the number one, the anchor of the passing game with the Raiders might be a mistake. Now, if John Gruden has a plan for him to kind of be the complementary player, the vertical stretch player, the guy that can do some things on catch and run passes and someone else is going to anchor it, fine. But when I look at their depth chart, they don't have a true number one receiver. So my fear with Ruggs is you're projecting him to be a number one receiver, and he never plays up to that. It's very similar to, and they're not the same player, but very similar to Ted Ginn Jr. being drafted early, and you're disappointed, but then when he goes other places and he falls back in the role that works for him, he has success and enjoys a 14-year career. It's really important that he plays the right role.
Cam Newton, why can't he find a space?
Man, there are a couple things that play with Cam Newton. One, the injuries and the COVID situation have prevented teams from really examining and seeing where he's at. He hasn't been able to work out for teams. He hasn't been able to visit with teams. They haven't been able to kind of check where he is mentally and physically. Secondly, he's a big personality. When Cam Newton steps into your locker room, big personality, a lot of players are going to gravitate towards him. He's an alpha. If you have a quarterback that is insecure, and most quarterbacks are a little insecure with the backup. If the backup is too talented, it makes them nervous. And Cam is talented and has a big personality. It's tough to take it on. And then finally, evaluators, whatever you thought about Cam Newton prior to him entering the league, those biases still kind of hang in there. And so if you were never comfortable with his style at Auburn, the way that he carried himself or whatever, it's hard for you to envision him being your backup quarterback. There are a lot of things that play, and we've seen familiarity is really the driving force when it comes to quarterbacks, particularly backups. I don't know how many advocates he has in the league that are saying, hey, bring me Cam. I can figure out how to play with him.
By the way, Dak's better than Andy Dalton. It's just not a big gap, right?
Oh, this is an insurance policy. I think the Dallas Cowboys are doing what most teams should do when it comes to the backup quarterback situation. A lot of teams will get a guy that the OC and the quarterback coach are comfortable with, that know how to do the stuff on the board, but they really can't play. The Dallas Cowboys went and got someone who can play. Look, Andy Dalton is not a high-end starter, but he's a low-end starter, high-end backup. If you're Mike McCarthy, if Dak Prescott goes down for 8 weeks, Andy Dalton can win you enough games with the supporting cast that he has around him. This isn't a threat to Dak, but it's more like the Dallas Cowboys going and getting a high-priced insurance policy to ensure that they can make a legitimate run this year.
Bucky Brooks, good talking to you, my man. Hope you're staying safe.
Hey, thanks so much, Colin. Talk to you soon.
You bet. This Mother's Day, 1-800-FLOWERS, limited delivery. It's important to lock your order in today. 1-800-FLOWERS, beautiful Mother's Day gifts, bouquets, arrangements. Go to 1-800-FLOWERS, click the radio icon, and enter the code HERD. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's if you didn't like Cam going in, you're probably what's happened is there's certain reasons why you didn't like him, and he's exhibited some of those reasons. So you're like, see, I told you. And if you like him, Nick Wright likes him. So Nick's like, hey, I thought he was this. See. A couple years ago he was that. So it's also, what's interesting about the NFL is like Chicago now is acknowledging Mitch Trubisky was not a great draft pick. Sometimes your GM who drafts a guy doesn't want to acknowledge I whiffed because you lose jobs, especially for a quarterback. So to bring Nick Foles in by Ryan Pace, the GM of the Bears, that's a big move. That he's acknowledging, yeah, I could have had Deshaun Watson. Yeah, I went with Trubisky. I still don't get that one. I think Matt Nagy, if he was on the job market, would have another job in 15 minutes. If he ever gets fired in Chicago, he basically can look at the GM and go,